Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, and like I do nearly every week, I just want to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And we really couldn't do the show without them. In fact, we couldn't do anything without our sponsors and advertisers. So a big thanks to all of them. Okay, let's meet the panel today. We have Enzo Mora. He's the CEO of The Mortgage Brain. The company has 110 staff covering the UK, the majority based in Gloucester on Brunswick Road. Turnovers hit 6.5 million last year, and we're hearing about a softening of the housing market. So we'll find out from Enzo how the mortgage market is faring, and of course, that all important housing sector. We have Mark Cummings, the ex BBC Radio Gloucestershire business breakfast presenter. He's not the business breakfast presenter. He was the breakfast presenter. He's been a journalist, a presenter, a reporter, a quizmaster. Now he's the author of his first book, Glorious Gloucestershire, proven to be a huge success. He's now a travel writer, so we'll find out about his latest trips, and also I'd like to find out his tips for becoming a travel writer as well. How does he become a travel writer? We got David Morton, headmaster of King's School in Gloucester. The school currently has 750 pupils, 230 staff, turnover excess of £12 million. This week we've heard of another independent school closing its doors due to the government's 20% increase in VAT. So we'll hear from David how he feels the sector is faring, and of course the latest news from King's School as well. I just want to add that our daughter Hannah went to King's School and she is now a teacher. I just want to say a big thanks to David and his team to help us achieve that. We got Attila the Hun. Attila. We got Attila Roos, the owner of Holy Spirits and wine agent. And I wrote that down so I could get Attila's name right, by the way. He's based in Nailsworth, not in Hungary. Nailsworth on Fountain Street. He's a specialist merchant of whiskies and fine wines and spirits as a wine agent. He looks after private clients and their fine wines and spirit collections and investments. We found out about the business, how it's fared during the terrible roadworks in Nailsworth. Went on for weeks and weeks. And we'll also ask him to pick a bottle of wine for one of our guests as well. You don't have to give it free, by the way, but a recommendation, that would be great. Okay, guys, let's have a quick look to see what's making the headlines, courtesy of the BBC. Okay, here we go. The Daily Telegraph. Starmer caves into rebels on benefits. The Daily Mail. Starmer caves into rebels on benefits again. The Guardian. Massive concessions on welfare bill win over key Labour rebels. The Times. PM pledges protections for disabled to rescue bill. The Financial Times. Starmer yields to avert Labour civil war over cuts to welfare. The Metro. Keir not faring too well. The Mirror. New hopes on Pips. The Daily Express. How dare you suggest she is on her deathbed? This is about the Dame Esther Ranson. The Sun. Killer's back stalking Cheryl. And the Daily Star. It's alive. Frankenstein's boffins. We always love the Daily Star for a little bit of a light entertainment. Okay, Mark, great to have you on the show. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Okay, couple a serious one and a light one. I mean, obviously Keir Starmer's everywhere when it comes to the climb down and the U-turn. But there's a piece in the Times today, chilling number 10 gag on civil servants speaking in public. And it could be Ofsted, it could be Ofcom, it could be health chiefs, it could be military. This, if it's true, we don't know if it's true, but this is a well-researched piece in the Times. And it's interesting as a journalist, in my career, you have moments where there's this tug of war with people. This is more speaking in public as opposed to a pre-set media interview. And what's really interesting, there's a wider question about democracy here and free speech, but quite often some of these people will use a public forum to make a point, knowing it will get picked up by the media, which they're not allowed to make within the media, if you see what I mean. There's a game that goes on. Now, if this is true, there's going to be big reaction to this story in the Times because it comes back to free speech and it comes back to what these people. And I feel for some of them because you get the press office from number 10 saying various things they can do and not. I mean, I've interviewed a million politicians. I had a lovely bit of the Gloucester History Festival when I was hosting Alex Chalk and Richard Graham, two people I've had a lot of fun and games with over the years. And we get on very well. And when Alex was Justice Secretary, they literally wouldn't let him on the show because they knew I'd ask him about Partygate and stuff like that. So that's a piece in the Times today. On the lighter side, I would recommend, if anyone hasn't seen it, Noel Edmonds, his new life in Australia, New Zealand. I saw the first one last week, and the next one's on tonight. Someone I grew up with Noel Edmonds, and I loved his Radio 1 breakfast show. But Ali Ross in The Sun, Noel Edmonds, TV genius, oddly mesmerising and mesmerisingly odd. This is someone who has had the most amazing career, but has absolutely no sense of self-awareness. When you've lived your life on the telly, I won't say any more about it. Just watch it. It'll make you cringe, but it's actually quite fascinating as well. Okay.
I was a bit. Thanks ever so much for that. I was a big Noel Edmonds fan as well. What was the television program he had when we were kids?
Top Shop and Late Breakfast Show and Noel's House Party and all that sort of nonsense.
Yeah, that's right. Great stuff. Thanks ever so much for that, Mark. Hey, David, great to see you again. Let's bring you in. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Morning, Mark. I've picked out a story from The Guardian about deepfakes, and this is based on a new law which is going to be passed in Denmark, but I think it has direct relevance to us over here, and I'll kind of talk about it generally and then also about the impact on education, which is obviously the area that I work. So Danish politicians are taking steps now, passing a law so that people will own the copyright on their own features, so things like images of their body, face, voice, and so on. And this is to combat generative AI, which can take our personal information and can then transform it into something fake for different purposes. And of course, some of that can be humorous and quite light-hearted, but some of that can be a little bit more unpleasant and targeted and around extortion and so on. And there's been loads of examples, haven't there? I think just before Pope Francis passed away, there was that image of him in the puffer jacket. Donald Trump has been sort of promoting himself with a series of quite interesting images. But the kind of relevance for me is that in the education sector, this is posing a real problem because, of course, children have AI now on their phones, and of course they will experiment, and that's quite normal and natural. But it can be very harmful if images are taken of a child, potentially linked to pornography, or if someone's trying to extort money out of them. And, you know, this is happening in every school, every secondary school in the country. So it's a real concern. So great to see that the Danes are making a bit of a stand on it, and let's hope that that will gradually spread across the EU and to the UK as well.
I must admit, I totally agree with you. I think this deep fakes is just the tip of the iceberg of what is coming down the tracks for this, and we haven't really. I don't think the government's really got control of it. It's fantastic to see the Danes actually doing something about it at long last. Is it a really big problem in the schools, David?
It is a big problem in schools, yeah. And there's kind of two areas that I notice it most. One is that some parents now don't want their children's face to be in any photos, which is fine. Of course, you respect their choices. And some of them might work in cyber industry or defense industries, and there's a very good reason for it. But that means that you can't then publish photos with all the other children, or you can't take a photo with their child in. So it becomes rather exclusive rather than inclusive. And the other one is we have had cases, I think this will be the case in every secondary school in the country, where people have responded to images that are sent to them online, and then it's turned into something rather more unpleasant, and they've been asked to send money. Otherwise, images will be shared with their contacts, and once that's happened, you know, it's very, very hard to close it down. So yeah, it's a real issue.
No, thanks ever so much for that. No, thanks ever so much for bringing it to our attention. Enzo, let's get you on the show as well. Great to see you again, as always, mate.
Morning, Mark.
What have you picked out for us, please?
Firstly, Wimbledon Fortnight starts next week. Really excited and looking forward to that as a tennis fan. But Oliver Tarvett, British world number 719, and a student at the University of San Diego playing tennis at college, is qualified for the main draw at Wimbledon. And there's prize money for getting to the first round of £66,000. But as a uni student, he's not eligible to collect his prize winnings. So I think he can collect up to about $10,000 and not lose his eligibility to still play at college tennis.
Now, I know that you're a big tennis fan, because aren't you chairman of the Gloucestershire Tennis Association or something like that?
I am, yes.
How many
And that
members
looks
are there?
after paddle as well. And I know you're into your racket sports.
Yeah, big time. So how many members are there of the Gloucestershire Tennis Association? Just very quickly.
Clubs are approximately 50 and growing because of the governance of paddle as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I'd love paddle. I'm looking forward to giving you a game of paddle and pickle sometime.
Me too.
Okay, right. Thanks ever so much for that. Okay, let's get you on, Athila. What have you picked out for the papers, please?
So, I'm trying to go a bit more lighthearted, and also because I'm a massive fan of the James Bond whole series. Watched plenty of them with my older brother growing up. It's cool to see that Denis Villeneuve is going to be the director of the film director for the new Bond movie. So very exciting. He's behind some pretty massive films with things like Arrival, Dune, and so on. And well, yeah, very exciting to see a really top drawer film director behind what is for me one of the most exciting films, one of the most exciting franchises to follow.
Actually, I loved Bond's films, and I must admit, I don't think they should have killed him off on the last one. I think that was a mistake. Don't you think? If you're a big Bondy fan, surely he always gets away. He always gets his man. He always gets the girl, and he always walks away. But this time wasn't the case. Just as what do you think?
Well, it was by far not my favorite film, not my favorite of Bond films. It was, yeah, interesting story. Again, the idea of killing him at the end. I guess there is an attempt of resetting what will follow, and that's a way of doing it. Could have been done differently, but hey.
Okay. Never mind.
With Athila and that voice and those looks, I think that there's a man there who could be a character in a Bond. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but boy, just the voice and the good-looking fella. Come on, we should be pitching him for the next movie.
I think so. I totally agree with you, mate, without a shadow of a doubt. Come on then, just very quickly opening to the panel. Mark, should they kill Bond off at the end, good or bad?
I don't. I'm still in it. I don't know how they're going to bring it back. I don't know how they're going to reset it, as Athila said. So if he's gone, how do they narratively bring him back? So I will reserve judgment until I see the beginning of the next Bond movie, because I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
David, what do you reckon? Good or bad?
Yeah, I love the Bond movies. I'd have left him and carried on. There's plenty of films that are sort of out of their time and don't make much sense, and we still enjoy them. But I can see why the reset was needed.
Okay, Enzo, quickly, Bond, good or bad?
I haven't watched the latest one, so I'm really pleased that you've told me the ending.
Yeah, sorry about the spoiler there, mate, but there you go. It wasn't that good anyway. Okay.
Don't tell him about the Titanic, anyone, by the way. If he hasn't seen Titanic, don't tell him how that ended either.
Yes, exactly.
It all ends in tears, is exactly the same, mate. Okay, let's get you on, Mark. Your travel stuff, you've been all over the place. Last time you were on the show, you were in Japan. I think this time you were in Europe, weren't you?
Yeah, so I went with a company called Byway Travel, who do the free, the no-flight holidays. So it's the environmental sense. You get on a train, you go around Europe. So it was lovely because my local station's Kemble, with the lovely Deirdre from Off the Rails Cafe, who gave us a bacon butty. We jumped on the train and we went to Paris, and then we went to Geneva. Then we went to Milan for a couple of nights. Then we went to Lecco, which is near Lake Como, a couple of nights there. Then we went on the Bernina Pass, the most amazing train journey through the Alps back to Switzerland, to a place called Kur. Then we went to Bern, and then we went back to Kemble. I love a road trip. I love being in different places and wondering where we were 3 nights ago. And you're going from the Alps right down to the lakes and across Europe. That was staggering, and it's lovely because I'm now writing it up and cutting the videos and all that sort of stuff. But what's interesting?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you about that. Do you not write it on the day then when you're there?
No.
Do you sort of sit there and you get your laptop out, you and Joe have just been somewhere to a lovely meal, think, okay, I'll write this down now?
No, I just live it. And then when I get back, process it. I think, yeah, I mean, I might write the odd little bit in my phone if I met someone interesting or there was a little moment. But no, I think for me, we're all different as writers. For me, I just need to live it and breathe it and enjoy it. Also, you want to do it for real. You don't want to be constantly thinking about what you're doing. You just need to do it. It's interesting about the timeline, because last time we spoke about Japan, Mark, and I put the videos out and I'd put some bits and bobs out, but the Japan trip with Walk Japan has now just gone out in Cotswold Life, because there's a time lag when you get things printed. So the Japan trip has been great, because I've been talking about it and being interviewed about it and cutting my own stuff, but the actual literature has only just gone out in July's edition of Cotswold Life. And now this is interesting for the business community. Walk Japan, knowing that Gloucestershire stroke the Cotswolds, where my profile is a very tempting area for them. They're wanting to put on an event in Gloucestershire where we talk about Japan and pilgrimages. So I'm helping them with that. Where do we do it? Who do we do it in association with? Who's part of it? So I'll come back to you on that when we next speak. But that's a really exciting business thing because of the patch that we all live in. There's a travel writer having a profile here is quite a pull for them. So yeah, so watch out. We're going to put on a Japan night because everyone's talking about Japan. Everyone wants to go to Japan. So
it's funny. I've always wanted to go to Japan myself as well. Okay, we've kind of run out of time, Mark. But what's your top 3 tips then of becoming a travel writer? So suddenly, if I decide Punchline's had its day, I want to follow Mark Cummings' route into travel writing, what would be your top 3 tips? Okay, very quickly then. You need to know who you're writing for, as in who is the person, who are you going for? Who's your target market? For me, I'm an empty nester flies again. It's really simple. I'm in my late 50s, traveled a lot all through my life, but now the kids have grown up. It's me and my wife. So for me, I'm writing to empty nesters who have got that time and maybe a little bit of money. You need to make yourself unique. The second tip is what is unique about you, your life, your writing style. And the third tip is you got to work out which platform you want to go on. Do you want to try and write in magazines, online? Are you making little Instagram videos? So there's so many platforms. You need to work out which platform. So those are the 3 tips I give. Okay, thanks so much for that. Okay, let's bring you in, David. King's School, we've talked about it quite a few times. I remember you coming on the show when the government were talking about bringing in the 20%, VAT on independent schools. Massive hit to the school sector. And again, the other week I read that another independent school is closing, and they've said it's because the parents can't afford the 20% because it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the 20% is one big hit, but it's also all employers have had the increase in minimum wage. We've had national insurance contributions as well. Those of us that are charities have lost our mandatory business rate relief, which we used to benefit from. So it's been layer upon layer of challenge, and VAT is definitely the biggest element of that. So it's really sad. There are over 100 schools that have closed in this academic year. Literally every week goes by, another one closes. And they tend to be, by and large, the smaller schools, sometimes rural schools which were, living on the margins really a little bit. But what we're also seeing in the sector is lots of schools merging together. So, smaller prep schools being bought out by larger independent schools, and also the growth of for-profit school groups. So there are some really big multinational school groups now who are buying up schools, and they're businesses. They're not a charity like King's, which has been here for nearly 500 years. And so they can look at the school, they can decide if it's worth keeping open or not, and then they can sell it off and make money from the assets. So there's a great deal of volatility in the sector on the back of VAT and all the other hits that have come along as well.
100 schools closing. I haven't seen that sort of number. That's crazy. I mean, surely there isn't the places in the private sector, the public sector, to get all these pupils to move over.
Well, the figure is that over 11,000 children have moved from independent schools to state schools so far this academic year. So, obviously it's going to vary by region. In some areas there are spaces in their schools, but as we all know, in Gloucestershire, the grammar schools are the area where everyone wants to get their children, and there certainly aren't spaces to go into there. So, it's a great shame, and people have been paying for their children to go to an independent school. They're also paying their taxes. They're not doing any harm to anyone. So to now have those children added into the state sector, which is already underfunded itself, and has got many, many challenges for head teachers running their schools, it's not really helping anybody, unfortunately, in my view.
And the other thing is, a lot of parents who put their children through private schools, they make an awful lot of sacrifices to do that in the first place. I know that we did. Didn't have a holiday for 7 years when in order to make sure that we could afford to carry it through. There's a lot of that going on, isn't there? And that those types of people, obviously, I don't know. You tell me. Sorry.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. People do make massive sacrifices, and yeah, I'm not going to criticise people who put their children in state school. That everyone is entitled to that, and again, we pay for it through our taxes, and it's an important part of the British education system. But if you want your child to go to independent school, you're going to have to work incredibly hard. Both parents generally have jobs. Some have 2 or 3 jobs. And you're right, they won't be updating their car, they won't be putting in that new kitchen or the extension on the house, they won't be going on exciting overseas holidays because they know that their child needs to be in an independent school or is going to benefit from it. And those who perhaps have children with a special educational need that maybe can't be met in the state sector easily will look to an independent school with smaller class sizes where there might be specialist support. These are all people doing their best for their children. And as all of us who are parents on the call will know, that's all you want to do at the end of the day.
Very, very, very quickly, I'm sorry to run out of time, David, but what's going on at King's School at the moment? Obviously, it's such a busy school.
Yeah, it is busy school. We're having a really good year, and we're just actually working even harder than ever to make sure that is the case. We're coming up to our 485th anniversary year next year, so we're making lots of preparations for that. But last night I went and saw The Wizard of Oz, which was a fantastic production in the junior school. We've got Treasure Island in the senior school next week. We've won trophies in rugby, cricket, netball, and we had a big sports dinner at Kingsholm Stadium celebrating all of that. So there's loads and loads of good news going on at Kings, but you have to keep working hard to stay on top of the game.
Well, it's like any business, isn't it? It's a treadmill we're all on every single day. But no, congratulations to you and your team there, David. Shadow of Day, do a great job there, mate. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show too. Okay, let's go over to you, Athila. There we go, Athila. So, about how is business at the moment?
Business is okay. We've had a pretty good March since, and you mentioned the roadworks. I think in April I did about half of what I've done in March, which was perhaps a sign of roadworks and seasonality and everything else. And it's been on and off since. It hasn't been. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. The business is open. I cannot complain in that sense. And even though it's hard, as you said, we're on a treadmill. At least I'm having fun whilst I'm doing it.
Okay, so is there? I mean, obviously, a lot of people invest in wines. They invest in whiskey for long-term financial security. Is that still the case? Because again, things are a bit tougher in business.
Both wine and whiskey, when you're talking about the investment side of it, they have taken a very serious readjustment over the last 3 years or so. The peak of whiskey was probably about 2 years, and you're talking about certain bottles literally bouncing off the shelf within the day of arrival, and then those bottles being immediately sent to auction and then being flipped for a 30-50% return and so on. And that was going on 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, non-stop. That has changed alongside the readjustment of the fine wine market too, which perhaps was necessary because some of the prices and some of the brands were just abusing of the market in that sense. They saw that that's what was happening, and they were just releasing limited editions that were actually not very limited, a limited edition every month of something new just to try and rake the market. And consequently, that created a fake economy way, and that bubble has burst.
Right. And what about the gin market? Because again, the gin market at one point, everyone seemed to be opening their own gin distillery. Is that still the flavour?
It's still very prominent. I think thankfully it has slowed down a little bit, and I said thankfully because there is a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm making gin," and I joke that they are not. They're just making tea. Because what they are doing is they buy a neutral grain spirit and they have a tiny little pot still somewhere. They put whatever botanicals they want, redistill that, and then they say, I've made gin. Yes, but if you're not distilling from scratch your own grain spirit, and what is the quality of that grain spirit to begin with? What is your pot still? It's a little bit like saying that if you want good food, a chef will cook for you. Does he have the right kit? Is he qualified to do so? Sure, I can cook something at home and it will be edible, but I wouldn't call it chef quality. So the gin craze was like everyone suddenly say, I'm a chef. No, you're not. You can
Okay,
feed people, you're not making good quality gin. Even when I've opened the shop, I had 3 or 4 people coming in saying, would you like to have your own white label gin and we can make something for the shop? No, I don't.
No, so it sounds like a good idea to me. You've got to stick with the quality at the end of the day. No, thanks ever so much for that. And again, we'll come up to the very end. I'll come back to you to pick a bottle of wine for some of the guys here. Okay, Enzo, let's go over to you, please, mate. Thanks ever so much for sitting there patiently. Enzo, the housing market is taking a bit of a... Well, I hear the housing market is slowing down. Is that the case?
We haven't seen that, Mark. Levels of inquiries are still being maintained, and they were very strong at the start of the year, and we thought that was to do with the rush to buy a property before the end of March and the stamp duty changes. So post-March, stamp duty costs have increased, but our inquiry levels have continued. So we haven't seen it yet. Interest rates are dropping. Lenders are dropping interest rates on deals that are available, and criteria is improving, especially in our market at the Mortgage Brain, where we work with developers and new build properties. Lenders are now allowing smaller deposits when buying a new build property. So we haven't seen it yet, Mark, and I'm hoping that the momentum continues throughout the rest of the year.
There's a lot of new build going on around Gloucestershire. Do you drive around and think, oh, that's another tasty one. There's another Wimpy Hope thing. There's a Bovis. There's Newland Hope. I mean, there's lots of different, shall we say, house builders here. We're very fortunate, aren't we, in some ways, that we have so many here based as well in the county.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking a drive along the Twigworth Road the other day and couldn't believe the change in the landscape in that area. It's incredible.
Well, it's like Elms Park, isn't it? They're going to have 4,300 new homes on that area. Again, are you dealing with these guys at this early stage?
Well, we're on the panel of a lot of the national developers. So we're working on some of the projects in Gloucester, but not all of them. So we don't get in early doors on a development.
Okay, which ones are you working with in Gloucester?
Blore, Linden, Bovis, Barrett, David Wilson. So quite a few.
Wow. Yeah, quite a few. And how many sort of new mortgages are you doing a month? Is there a sort of particular? Do you set a target for your guys, or how does it work as a business?
We have targets. Thankfully, we're hitting those. We're sort of sticking in around about 600 new mortgage applications on a monthly basis.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, the thing about the mortgage, I always think that why it's so busy, why it's so important at the end of the day, the houses, because when you sell a house, you've got the painters, the decorators, the kitchen, there's all the other types of people, isn't it, involved in the housing market.
And your point is we should invest more in it and allow that area to grow because that would stimulate our economy?
Yes, that's exactly my point. Because it's all circular at the end of the day. It all comes around and we all wash each other. That's what business is about, isn't it? You have a successful builder, he buys whiskey, he goes to a travel agency, he puts his kids in private school, he might advertise on Punchline. The whole thing works together, isn't it? That's the way that business works. All right.
Mark Owen for Prime Minister.
If only the Prime Minister, if only Rachel Reeves understood that. But there we go. We're not going to go into that today. Thanks ever so much for that, Enzo. Okay, we're running out of time, guys. We're going to do the pick of the punchlines. David, I'm going to start with you, please. What have you picked out for this week's punch?
Well, it picks up from Enzo's point, really. This was about a development at Sneedham's Green in Matson. 180 homes had planning permission, I think, 2 years ago. But the wranglings are still going on because there's an ancient moat, a kind of medieval patch of common land and a moat and an island in there. And I have to say, from my point of view as a city centre resident, I always say this, there is so much vacant land in the centre of Gloucester and so many shops that are closed down. And I read this sort of thing and I just wish that we could perhaps do a bit more on brownfield sites and a little bit less in areas of important environmental or historical value to our community, because I think it does have an impact over the years. But I would absolutely understand Enzo and property developers who, of course, want to find something green and easy and cheap to build on. So that was my little subject of interest locally.
Okay, I couldn't agree with you more. Start with the brownfield sites first. Also, like solar panels. Don't build solar panels on farmland, for Christ's sake. Put them on top of supermarkets and car parks and things like this. Anyway, thanks ever so much to David. Enzo, I'm going to go back to you. What have you picked out from this week's punchline, please?
Get Some Rooms was the title. A trio of Gloucester hotels go up for sale. We've had a bit of investment in the city centre with the forum, and you've promoted that and showed us how great that looks. Keys looks incredible, and then we've got our city centre that could do with a bit of a refurb, and I'm hoping that we might see a bit of change if we've got a few hotels up for sale.
No, without a shadow of a doubt. No, thanks for that. It is a worry with the city centre. We ran the story about River Island going to close in January. There aren't many, not being funny, there aren't many female shops, retailers in the city centre at the moment. It's a real worry. Thanks ever so much for that, Enzo. Athila, what have you picked out for this week's punchline, please?
Talking about Rave Coffee in Cirencester and them helping the planet. They subscribe to this thing called 1% for the planet, which basically means that, if they do more business, more money goes into supporting projects run by non-profit social enterprise, which is pretty cool. And on the conversation, it talks about how little communities, such as one in the Timor East, where they are heavily reliant on diminishing oil sales, lacking basic infrastructure, and how those projects actually help little communities and farmers to actually have a more decent life and make something out of it, which is lovely.
No, good stuff. They are a fantastic business, Rave Coffee. You really are going all guns blazing. Mark, what have you picked out, please?
Yeah, I'll take us to the Forest of Dean, actually. Lovely piece about the future of the wilderness centre. So if you go up Plump Hill to the Forest of Dean, this is a place that generations of people have gone to for outward bound adventures and stuff like that, and lots of school trips. So it connects with so many people, and it's a community share scheme, because it's had its ups and downs, the wilderness centre, but just to be outdoors in the Forest of Dean doing something active is an amazing thing. So that was a nice one. And the Clapham Court, going back to Centre of Gloucester and buildings, the tower block at Clapham Court, the future of that, will it be knocked down? Will they be having some residential homes? Is an interesting piece there. That whole area is quite fascinating. You've got Roots Cafe. You've got, for many of us, that's the walk down to Kingsholm to watch the rugby. And there's a real sense of, there's an energy to that area. And I've got an old friend of mine who said the reason it's called Clapham, that whole area, and I think he's talking absolute rubbish, but it's still worth hearing, is that back in the old days, people used to have their pigeons and they'd do pigeon racing. And they'd send the pigeons off, and a few hours later, when they came back, they'd clap them back in. So as the pigeons came back, they would clap them back in. Do you know what? I think place name, the derivative of place names in Gloucestershire is fascinating. If only there was a book out there that had lots and lots and lots of examples of that, Mark.
Well, I think I might get onto it before you. Anyway. No, thanks ever so much. Okay, I'm going to throw it back over to Athila. Come on, Athila. Pick a bottle of wine. What would you pick for the guys?
Cool. I had picked a couple, but one thing that I forgot to mention earlier on, apologies for that, when you asked about the business. A couple of things that have happened recently. actually on the Cotswold Life, there's a piece that came out right after Mark's little
Hold
adventure
on,
in
guys. Are
Japan.
you all plugging alternative media to Punchline here? I can't believe
Sorry,
it. I can't believe it, guys. This is
yeah,
not what it's about. Look, it's all about the Punchline. What's in the Punchline?
sorry.
Jesus.
So there's an article that came out on the shop, which is pretty cool. I'm very excited about that, and very thankful for the guys from Cotswold Life. That's me there. And we started a podcast, a whiskey and barbecue podcast called Through the Smoke. And I forgot to talk about that, so quick mention there. Sorry for that. We'll talk about it again.
It's okay, mate. We've only got 10 minutes over now, so it's all right.
Okay, on
pick
to
out
the
a
liquid
bottle of
side
wine
of
for us.
things.
Goodness gracious. You owe me a drink now after this.
I owe you a bottle, I think. So because Mark has just been, it's now a little while ago, but Mark has been to Japan. I thought it would be relevant and connect a few things at the same time. So I've got a bottle from Yura Jintaro, who is a Japanese man, used to be a sommelier back in Japan, and he did a stint in New Zealand and then in Burgundy, training with different winemakers before he decided to move with his family to Japan and create his own little winery. And this is the baby. And
all right, okay.
he crafts, the idea is that he uses very much the Japanese mentality of everything very precise, everything very clean, beautiful winery, everything just in the right place, no space for chance, if you may. Instead, everything is about precision and purity. And the way that, generally speaking, the Japanese approach food, it's all about a purity of the ingredient, and that same principle translates into how he makes the wine. So he makes wines that are from a biodynamically grown grapes, so beautiful vineyards, very well looked after, no pesticides, no herbicides, no nothing, following cycles of the moon and so on, and creates a wine that is, this is from Alsace, so near the Vosges Mountains, so a mountain wine, if you may, and a pure Pinot Blanc, which is a grape variety that gives just a little bit of an aromatic edge, but the core of the grapes and the wine itself is very clean, very delicious, very mineral and precise. So yeah, a little
There we go.
for,
Wine of the week. Well,
Mark's
I've got to ask you, being a journalist, then. Go on, how much does that retail for, Athila?
This is a very cool £52.
Sure. Marky Cummings can afford that without a shadow of doubt. In fact, I think all of my guests can afford that. Okay. I just want to say thank you ever so much. That's all we've got time for. We've ran over again, but always very interesting. Thank you to my wonderful panel, to my wonderful sponsors, agents, accountants, and business advisors. To all of you for watching the show, thank you also. And remember, we'll be back again next week. But in the meantime, it's all in the Punchline. Thank you ever so much. Bye.